bigger picture on BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon and welcome to the show. In Malaysia, by the year 2030, older persons will constitute 15% of our population. That means we will be an aging population. Healthy aging is an emerging issue due to increased life expectancy as a result of healthcare advancements. The quest for the fountain of youth has consumed mankind, and throughout history, across many cultures, there has been countless of tales and legends of magical springs or elixirs that would restore your youth and keep death at bay. But here to share more about that quest is scientist Dr Joseph Chang, who is also the author of a book titled The Myth of Aging. Welcome to the show, Dr Jo. How are you today?
Thank you, Meera. My pleasure to be here.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Were you born and bred in Malaysia? I know you don't live here anymore. And what led you down this path of eventually coming up with a book titled The Myth of Aging?
Yes, indeed. Once upon a time, I am born in Malaysia. And essentially, I'm from a town, Ipoh, and where I was educated in high school before I left for university in England. So it's been more than 40 years now. I've been outside of Malaysia, and I do come back very often, but primarily now it's really on behalf of my company. And it's been great to come and visit Malaysia and bringing all the latest developments. I'm trained as a scientist and primarily focusing on this whole new big field that we call anti-aging product development, and it's important. We focus on skincare products as well as natural supplements as well.
When you talk about research and development, I always get very excited. What have you found out thus far over the last 40 years in terms of aging? What have some of your discoveries been?
Yeah, the most important insight that we have gotten from all the scientific research is that our body has this innate ability to stay young as we age. So we have been discovering there are two types of aging. One we call chronological aging, which is obviously very time dependent. And a year from now, for example, you and I will be a year older.
Yes.
And there's another type of aging that is becoming very important, and that's called biological aging. And that is how the body ages over time. And that's the one we've been focusing on, because we believe now, with all the latest scientific research, we have a great opportunity to make sure that a year from now, that our body doesn't have to be a year older biologically.
And what are you doing? What do these products actually do?
Yeah, well, our products are focusing on looking and sort of influencing what we now call the genetic sources of aging. And that is that the most recent discoveries are pointing towards the fact that ultimately the aging process starts at the genetic level. And that relates to the number of genes in our body and how they can influence the aging process. They can influence it in a negative manner, i.e., in other words, accelerate aging, or they can actually help to slow the aging process if they are expressing themselves in the right manner.
Sometimes we talk about aging gracefully. Why was there a need to fight the process of aging in the first place?
Well,
there's a reason why we're aging.
Absolutely. There is a reason, and inevitably we do age, right? But I think there's an economic reason too, because every country that I visited, and we all know that Japan, for example, is a prime example of a society that's aging.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to continue working, in other words? And in 2035, in Malaysia, it's going to be identified as an aged population in this country as well. So, and when you look at the economy, there are really basically two factors. Either we're going to have more young people working, or we're going to have the older people to continue to work. That's the only way to keep the economy thriving and churning enough and for the country to grow economically. So we are faced with two factors, obviously. The younger folks are less willing to have more babies now. And therefore, the older people, we have to keep them healthy. And we believe that we can do that.
So you're looking beyond aesthetics. You're looking at the machinery itself.
Yes.
So which part of the machinery are you actually targeting?
We're looking at the genetic machinery.
Okay.
And that's really looking at how we can influence the genes.
So this is like a targeted sort of therapy?
Yes. I would call it a more targeted way of helping wellness and keeping the body healthy. And unlike drugs, we are more focused on preventing or slowing down the aging process. Because as we look at diseases in general, we are beginning to see the major diseases that are coming out in the 21st century and in the future would be age-related type of diseases.
Sure.
Cancer is a prime example of an age-related disease.
But all of us are made up genetically very different. Almost the same, but there's a slight variation. So then how does a general product target your genes?
By making sure the activity, although we are slightly different, we now know that the aging process is fairly similar in all of us. And this addresses this classic adage of nature versus nurture. We now know the environmental factors, the external factors, comprise this nurturing concept, if you will. And that is, as we age over time, those external factors are in fact the most important things that influence how your genes behave.
So you're talking about epigenetics?
Yes, we're talking epigenetics. Well, it's the next level of science we're going into.
That's interesting. So you are controlling the environment and how it influences our genes. How our genes actually are expressing themselves.
More accurately, we are protecting the body from these negative environmental factors.
Okay, so how well developed are these products? Are they scientifically proven? Have clinical trials been carried out? Yeah. Does the mainstream medical fraternity actually buy into findings like these? I mean, where are you standing at the moment?
Yes, we take our product development efforts all the way through from basic research, in other words, looking at the cellular level, all the way to a human clinical trial. So we adopt all the good practices in terms of scientific substantiation. So our products, we have to ensure we don't depend on hearsay to develop our products. We rely instead on scientific and clinical studies to provide the scientific evidence behind our products. So the two most important things is ultimately what we have to do for our products is to make sure they're safe and effective.
Right. Just to go back a little, how does our body really age? What's going on inside?
When you look at it, is that our bodies, it starts at the cellular level. When especially there's a little battery in our cells that's called a mitochondria.
Yes.
And that drives and makes the sort of chemical energy that is required of a cell to function properly. And we are trying to make sure that those mitochondria in every cell and every cell type in the body is well preserved by the introduction of these natural ingredients that we have discovered that can influence mitochondria function.
Right, and that's your mitochondria is really your power bank, isn't it?
That's our power bank.
That's the three-parent baby controversy as far as some people have a defective mitochondria.
Indeed.
And they've actually come up with a way of getting a mitochondria from another lady and implanting that into the lady who has a damaged mitochondria, and hence you actually can conceive, and it's called the three-parent baby.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, that's for another show altogether, but it is your power bank. So what drives or what powers the mitochondria to help power our system?
Well, eating the right manner, introducing the right micronutrients. These mitochondria need to be nourished as well, because if you provide them with the right raw materials or the raw sources of energy, they can convert it ultimately to this chemical that we call ATP. That's the chemical energy that drives every cell function in the body. So, but unfortunately during that process, there is also some toxic byproducts being produced in the mitochondria. And those toxic byproducts have to be taken out of the cell. If they're not, and over time, those toxic byproducts can in fact age the cell over a period of time.
Is it true that the whole aging process starts the minute you're born?
Indeed. In fact, there's some belief that at the age of 11, that's when you go downhill. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
What's going on at the age of 11?
Well, that's when the cell's starting to think it's time for me to start programming ourselves to go to what we call a senescent state. In other words, slow down.
But that's the age most people are hitting puberty.
I know, we do. And, all these things happen. But what is happening in the background is that those cells are also programming themselves to die.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay. And when you talk about aging, we're most concerned about our skin. Most of us are, anyway.
Yes.
On an aesthetic level. At what age do we start to be concerned about our skin?
At what age? I think every one of us start to worry, especially in a tropical country like Malaysia. We have so much intense sunlight. We start worrying when teenagers, I think, start to worry whether they're going to have young-looking skin, And then every year we worry. It's interesting when I come to Asia, I notice this is the only part of the world that people use umbrellas when there is no rain.
We tried.
We tried, isn't it? So there is an inherent, sort of you almost know what to do to protect your skin, from all these environmental negative factors.
Okay, and is it mostly, do we fight this process of aging internally, or does external care also play a role?
Both. And I think it's wonderful to use a lot of skincare products, but beauty also comes from the inside. So I think there's skin, after all, is part of the body. It's not a separate thing. So if you eat well, and if you exercise well, in other words, treat the body as a whole, there's a very good reason to think of the body holistically rather than separately. So taking a natural supplement can in fact help the skin as well.
Fantastic. We're discussing aging gracefully with Dr. Joseph Chang, a scientist. Up next, I want to know whether or not we can reverse this process of aging. On the Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9. Good afternoon and welcome to the show. It's our Health and Living segment, and we have scientist Dr. Joseph Chang in the studio with me to talk about the fountain of youth, how you can age gracefully, holistically, from the outside and the inside. Dr. Joe, if I'm 40 and, I haven't really been looking after myself internally, externally, can I actually reverse this process of aging?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes, I
How
think
is
so,
that?
Meera. Yes, I think it's not inevitable that you will go down this irreversible road. If you give the body a chance, it will recover. And there's no doubt about that. It's just a matter, obviously, the sooner you start, the easier the process is going to be. Yeah. So,
how does it work on a scientific level? Explain the science to me.
Okay. Well, at the genetic level, all the genes, there's only one thing that the gene does, and that is to make a protein. All right? And that's what that process we call gene expression. It's very simple. All genes do are to make proteins. Different types of proteins, and they're performing different types of jobs in the body and in a cell. But that gene expression you can influence. And that's a science that you sort of refer to as epigenetics. Mm-hmm. So if you turn on the right switches, that gene will behave properly. So you give it a chance, and that's what we're doing, is to make sure that we give the body a chance to behave properly and healthily by using some of these natural ingredients.
Is epigenetic science still at a very early development stage?
It is, but it's also clear that although at this early stage, we can influence epigenetics. And these are chemical tags we are beginning to discover. We have built, in fact, 30 years of information, of database, genetic information specifically related to the aging process.
Mm-hmm. How much of this have you taken on board personally?
In terms of the...
aging gracefully.
Aging.
Fighting this whole idea of aging.
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to ask you how old you are. So I can see whether it's working or not.
Well, I'm 60.
Okay.
So I think it's a personal journey for me myself, really. I started this whole scientific journey on how the aging process works is to figure out why my father died prematurely. And in fact, not so much in terms of his death, but in terms of his quality of his life before his death. He actually was an invalid. And that started to sort of prompt me to say, why is it that folks had to suffer so much before dying? Now, I had another example on the other side of the fence, and that was my mother-in-law. And she died gracefully. She died exactly the same age as my dad, but throughout her life, she had a wonderful life. She was not incapacitated. She could do whatever she wanted. And then suddenly one day she decided to close her eyes and passed away. Mm-hmm. That to me is the definition of dying healthy.
Of course.
No.
But then in this case, you're only able to control the epigenetics, which is the environment in which influences the expression of the gene. What you inherit from hereditary, sort of genes is not really something you can control.
No, that's the hardware. But what we could do is to control that hardware with the software. And that's what we think we can now change, is the software. Clearly, as you have indicated, you get the genes. That, to me, is fundamentally the hardware of the body. But the software, I think we can manipulate and influence. And that would be through this epigenetic science.
So you're talking about supplements, external products and things like that. But what about how much then do we then become complacent about our diet? Do we become complacent about exercise, which we always talk about when it comes to healthy aging?
Absolutely not. Those two things are almost, to me, the absolute givens. You got to do that. You got to eat right and you got to exercise right. There's a reason why these products are called supplements, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in English it means to supplement what you should be doing correctly. So all our products are really primarily to help people to supplement a great diet or great nutrition and to have a good exercise program.
The debate is still out there as to whether or not supplements really work. How would you defend that statement?
I think the debate is absolutely right, and there are supplements in there. If they're not manufactured correctly, and if they're not formulated correctly, they could be dangerous as well.
But how would we know?
Yeah. Well, through scientific studies and clinical studies. We do the science, and we publish our scientific studies for our scientific peers to evaluate and to make sure that there is enough scientific evidence to say that new skin products are safe and effective.
What are some of the myths of aging? What do people misunderstand about aging? Because in the Malay culture, they celebrate aging. Mm-hmm. A lot of us, on the other hand, don't think of it that way.
Yeah. I think perhaps the first myth is that aging is a process you can't control and is inevitable. And I've alluded to the fact there are two types of aging. There's chronological aging, and yes, that's something that is inevitable. A year from now, you're going to be a year older. The myth is really about biological aging, and that is for the body to stay young as long as possible. We believe that what you are really shooting for or focusing on, it should be living younger longer and not just live longer.
But we all cannot be living longer, Dr. Joseph.
I know.
What's going to happen? Who's going to grow old? There are going to be other implications. There is a reason why, we've extended our lifespan a little, but there's a reason why we all eventually die. And, we have new people being born. The world has got 7 billion people and more at the moment.
I agree with you, Meera. But remember, right, you're talking about just living longer. I want to make sure that we understand. We want to talk about the quality of life as long as you are able to live. I think that is valuable because with that quality of life, if you can preserve that, and the science is telling us we can, to improve that quality of life, everybody benefits clearly because, an aging population has been a blessing up to this point. It should be celebrated. It should not be looked at as something that is negative. The reason why we're looking at it as negative is because we worry that we have to take care of that aging population. Think about a world where that age population group is actually healthy and can still continue to contribute to society.
Everybody, or rather the pharmaceutical industry, is talking about the secret of anti-aging. Does that really hold water? What does that mean exactly?
Well, I think the pharmaceutical industry, on the other side of the coin, and I had been in that particular world before in my career, they are really referring to the fact that most modern diseases, if you will, they are age-related. So to understand the aging process, they have a better chance of developing more effective drugs. For us now, in the supplement world, we are more interested in prevention of diseases, and that is to look at how, we can keep the body healthy so that such age-related diseases don't happen as at an earlier age.
What would you say are the secret ingredients to healthy aging? I know retinol has been spoken about a lot in anti-aging products. What else?
There's another ingredient that has been studied quite a bit now. It's isolated from red wine. It's called resveratrol. That's an interesting ingredient that's been shown to have some anti-aging benefits. I'm not, by the way, to make sure that to encourage people to drink too much red wine now, because there is another ingredient in there that's called alcohol, and obviously too much alcohol doesn't help the aging process.
Okay, there are countless untrustworthy products out there, Dr. Joe, sold without legal certifications. How should we be more careful about selections?
Yes.
Do we go in, I mean, we can't be asking everybody for scientific papers, but how do we make good choices?
Yes. I think every consumer should get themselves sort of educated in terms of these supplements. I do agree with you. I'm frankly disappointed with the number of supplements that have been shown. Let alone, let's not talk even about whether they're effective or not. Just talk about safety aspects of these supplements. They have been adulteration, they have been contaminated with heavy metals, and so on. So a consumer should be extremely careful. I know not everybody is a scientist, but everybody should worry about where that supplement is being produced. They should look at the company, the quality of the company, where this product is coming from, and really making sure that it's coming from a reputable company rather than some strange company that nobody has ever heard of.
How do we not overburden the body with too much supplements?
Yeah.
And there is this argument that, you can take as much as you want because whatever the body doesn't need, it gets flushed out. That's not really the case, because there have been some studies coming out of the UK where supplements are causing problems.
I agree.
Yeah.
And supplements, it's totally the adage of everything in moderation applies to supplements too. You know, don't take so many supplements that you even forget how many supplements you are taking. Clearly, take what you need and not go overboard in terms of the number of supplements.
And how would you know what you actually need?
I think in general, you sort of know that.
Do you do a blood test?
You can, obviously, but I think I would say, as a general rule of thumb, one shouldn't be taking more than 5 supplements in general.
That's a lot.
That's in general.
5
maximum,
is a lot.
5 is a lot. But when you think about it, right, a multivitamin, that's 1. If you take something for energy, that's good, that's 2. And if you take something for your immune system, for general, to protect your immune system, that would be 3. So, and if there is a predisposition in a family for cardiovascular disease, you might wish to consider a supplement along the line of a fish oil product. So that's already 4. So that's usually, I mean, when you look at it, 5 isn't too many, I think.
Compliance is a big problem amongst everyone. How do you remain compliant when it comes to supplements? And if you do skip a couple of days, does that make a difference?
A couple of days, I don't think is going to make a significant difference. But if you skip a whole month, then I think it will make a difference. Because after all, like, it's a food-based product, and like everything else, when you eat food, I mean, you can miss a couple of days of food and sort of feel a little bit hungry without affecting the rest of your body. But with the supplements, I think compliance is an issue, and that's why it's not to take too many. Say, if you take a couple, you will remember to take them.
Some people tell you to take time off from supplements for a bit. So 6 months on, maybe 6 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. I could never understand the logic, but what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I don't either, because if you look at supplements in general, they tend to be natural ingredients and come from food sources. Would you be taking a holiday from eating? So if you apply that kind of logic to supplements, I think you would remember to take them and not sort of say, either you take them or you don't. I think that's a simple rule of thumb.
I've always tried to get my head around supplements that say it's a natural food source. How natural is this? I mean, you've obviously processed. How do you extract the natural ingredients and land with a final product called a supplement that was going to benefit me?
Well, I can only give you our point of view. the reason why we process some of these raw food ingredients is to make sure that we can actually standardize the product. That's important to us, insofar as that if you standardize a product, then you have set specifications, and you know exactly what you put into the final product. And that's the only reason why we process our raw materials before we put it into a final product.
Are you not compromising on the quality of the nutrients when you process it?
We don't, because we can use chemical analysis to establish that there's no compromise whatsoever on these natural ingredients.
So what's on the horizon for anti-aging research, Dr. Joe?
Well, the vision for me one day is that you have started off with the discussion on, we are slightly different. I think it will allow us one day to achieve the perfect customization for you. I mean, if you are different from me, then I think one day, we have the ability to customize that supplement just for you and specifically for you. That's our vision.
Growing old is inevitable. What's your message?
Growing old is inevitable, but staying healthy is just equally inevitable. If you give your body a chance to stay healthy, it will.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. That was Dr. Joseph Chang, a scientist, talking to us about aging gracefully on The Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9.